This is the Financial News Network. I'm Christy Duffy. Apple has announced its earnings results for its first fiscal quarter of the new year. But that's not the only word out of the tech company's headquarters. Shares of the Apple stock were down over 2.25 for the close on Tuesday on news that CEO Steve Jobs will be taking a medical leave of absence. Joining me now to discuss the second largest company in the world by market capitalization is Scott Sutherland from Wedbush Securities. Welcome, Scott.
Great. Thank you, Christy.
So Apple beating the street's estimates for both earnings per share by $1 and revenue. But do you think investors are focusing in on the fundamentals this afternoon, or will they get caught up in the uncertainty surrounding the CEO's health issues on the conference call?
Well, I think that is one of the risks we highlighted when we initiated coverage earlier this month. But, you know, the company was very smart. They released it on a financial holiday and let the market digest that for a day. And, you know, you saw the public market today. The stock rallied back from being down much more early in the other markets earlier. So I think they've digested that now, having blowout earnings better than the last two quarters with upside. I think people are going to focus on the fundamentals more.
And you might say that Apple wouldn't be the company that it is today if it weren't for Steve Jobs. However, Apple has continued to thrive throughout the past decade, despite Jobs' 3 medical leaves of absence over that time period. Do you think there is too much panic going on? I mean, how much of a drop should investors be prepared for in Apple stock?
Yeah, I think when we've seen other health departures by Steve Jobs, the reaction's been a little bit more negative. I think investors have gotten very comfortable with their COO, Tim Cook, running the day-to-day operations of the company. There's clearly going to be speculation if Jobs is going to be back and what the issues are, but I saw another report that he's going to stay on the Disney board as well, so it sounds like, you know, he has intentions of staying active, you know, with as many roles out there and hopes to be back. But again, you know, this is a different company than 10 years ago. This management team, for all intents and purposes, has been together for the past decade, so I think everyone knows the strategy and you know, is focused on the product pipeline. So I think fundamentally they're a lot stronger, and I think the vision's a lot more tight with this management team, and I think they're fundamentally sound.
All right, well, focusing in now on the fundamentals ourselves, let's dig deeper into Apple's financials. Revenues were high. How did the tech company do in sales of its top devices this quarter?
You know, they did pretty well across the board, you know, versus my estimates. I haven't seen everyone's out there, but, you know, the only area they were a little light was the desktops, but they beat on the portables and overall Macs. iPods, you know, were down a little bit year over year as expected, but not as much as we thought, so that's continuing to hold in there. iPhones, they did 16.2 million iPhones. We're looking for just over 15 million, so very solid there. And the iPads, you know, after last quarter when everyone was jacking up their numbers on the street, they came in with a very solid 7.3 million iPads. We're looking for 6.3 million, and it looks like the ASPs held up across the board. We have not calculated those yet since the numbers have been out for only 10 minutes.
Well, speaking of the iPhone, you said you were looking for 16. How much was it again?
I was looking for 15.1 million, and they did 16.2 million iPhone shipments. 16
million in the quarter, and that's without Verizon's help. So on the news recently of the iPhone going to Verizon, and of course we can expect an iPhone 5 at some point this year. How much of a boost can we expect to see off the heels of that deal in the next quarter's earnings statement?
Yeah, we had already at the start of January modeled in about 10 million units for a Verizon iPhone. We think that's conservative. We do have about 2 to 3 million units being lost at AT&T, so the net benefit's about 7 to 8 million units. That said, I think the CDMA-based iPhone at Verizon will also find a home in some of the Asian markets. I think China, Korea, Japan are going to be some of the key target markets for that. So that is not modeled in our numbers, and that could present further upside there.
All right, and what's your price target on the stock, and will be affected by Jobs' departure?
You know, our price target's $405. You know, with the astounding earnings offsetting maybe some higher risk with Jobs leaving, I don't think there's going to be too much of an impact there. Apple's still trading at a pretty reasonable valuation versus historical levels, and we think fundamentals are sound at least for the next 2 years, if not longer.
All right, thanks very much, Scott.
Great, thank you, Christy.
Scott Sutherland of Wedbush Securities. We're looking forward to comments from Apple, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific. For further updates on earnings, keep it tuned to the Financial News Network. I'm Christy Duffy.